What's happening, everybody? It's Sean with Reactions to the Classics. And today, we've got a Burt Bacharach Top 10 or Spotlight, brought to us by a friend, longtime supporter and patron of the channel, Cat Dub. Thank you, Cat Dub. Appreciate you. Appreciate all the patrons who make this thing go. If you guys support us in any way, check out that Patreon link below or the Patreon link on the end screen. We could not do it without them. If you want to just give us a one-time donation, one-time reaction, any of that stuff, check out our Buy Me a Coffee page, also linked below. All right, well, Cat Dub, the patron who brought this, knows a ton about music, knows a ton about the history of music. So really looking forward to this. I know who Burt Bacharach is. I heard the name a lot growing up. I don't really know much about him, but we're about to change it because this is all Cat Dub's write-up. Just did a fantastic job on this. So Cat Dub says, Burt Bacharach, who passed away in 2023 at the age of 94, enjoyed a truly remarkable career spanning almost 7 decades. His last significant collaboration would have been the 1998 album composed with Elvis Costello entitled Painted from Memory. He was a composer, songwriter, record producer, and performing pianist who is, quote, widely regarded as one of the most important and influential figures of 20th century popular music, according to Wikipedia. To give Sean and everyone else a feel for the signature Burt Bacharach composition style, I've assembled a number of the biggest selling recordings of Bacharach material, along with a couple of lesser-known gems that don't get enough attention from music listeners. The majority of his hit compositions were written with Hal David as the lyricist, although he did write songs with various other people. Bacharach managed to create something new, a musically sophisticated, carefully arranged and orchestrated, soulful form of pop music that was more adult-oriented than, say, the type of teen anthems being written for and by Phil Spector, by the early rock and R&B songwriting teams such as Jerry Goffin and Carole King. Neither Bacharach nor lyricist Hal David really pandered much to the youth movement of the 60s or the adolescent music audience that seemed to be growing at a phenomenal rate, right along with the exploding music business. When working with Hal David, Bacharach did, however, manage to create a large number of iconic love songs that, for the most part, could be understood and appreciated by anyone of any age. That is the ticket, right? And if you like piano and horns on your recordings, well then, you've come to the right place. He favored a soulful approach to vocal performance in his own composition style, creating an unusual hybrid form in which elements of R&B, gospel, jazz, classical, Latin, and conventional pop melodies could appear together with a single composition, though not all at the same time. And the rhythm, time signature, or key could suddenly change and then revert back again, somehow without it all sounding like a gimmick. That's the tough part. That brings us to what was likely Burt Bacharach's greatest gift, his ability to synthesize many popular music styles without being enslaved to any one approach or relying upon a tradition of musical cliches. And to help make it all succeed in a soulful way, he often worked with or was recorded by leading R&B, soul, and gospel artists such as Nat King Cole, Johnny Mathis, The Drifters, the Shirelles, Dionne Warwick, Isaac Hayes, Luther Vandross, The Fifth Dimension, Gladys Knight and the Pips, Mavis Staples, Roberta Flack, and Aretha Franklin. That is a who's who. And that's just a small sample of the artists recording Bacharach's music. Wikipedia claims that Bacharach wrote 52 U.S. Top 40 hits, referencing a post on the songwriter Jimmy Webb's Facebook page, and 9 #1 songs. This includes 38 singles recorded by Dionne Warwick, out of which 22 reached the Billboard Top 40. Warwick was in fact so dependent on Bacharach and David for recording material that when the team decided to end their partnership in the early 70s, she ended up suing them for breach of contract in 1972. She claimed that their departure jeopardized her recording contract, and she won a $5 million lawsuit in the early 70s. That's a lot of money now, but in the early 70s, that was an insane amount of money, which sounds rather cold-blooded now, but fortunately within a decade, Bacharach and Warwick would reconcile and start working together again. Boy, well, Burt, like taking the high road there, right? Unlike many song composers of the rock era, Bacharach had actually studied music theory and composition and earned an Associate of Music degree in 1948 from McGill University in Montreal. 2 of his early notable achievements was to be hired as a conductor and arranger for both crooner Vic Damone and legendary film star Marlene Dietrich's touring nightclub act. He would work with Dietrich for 5 years before deciding to devote himself entirely to songwriting. It would have been easy, though, to make this a Dionne Warwick playlist since she recorded the best of the Bacharach and David catalog, but I tried to feature a number of artists to keep things interesting. Note that this playlist is in order of recording release date rather than the song's actual publishing date. Okay, so that's where we get the artist spotlight. Now, I'm still going to call it a top 10 in parentheses just to get everyone to understand there's 10 songs and come in and watch it. But if you haven't been to this before, the music won't be in the video, but it'll be a Vimeo link below. So click on that and follow along with us. Let's get to the first track. So we'll get to our first song. It's Love That Really Counts by the aforementioned Shirelles, released in 1962. Ancat Dub says, I'd like to be in one of the earlier Bacharach compositions recorded before he was widely known. This song was written in 1962 by Bacharach with lyrics by Hal David. It was recorded as a demo by the then unknown singer Dionne Warwick, but it was the Shirelles who released the first recording of it in August of 1962. Formed in 1957, the Shirelles were the most significant of the early girl groups, essentially being the role model for all the famous R&B and rock era all-girl groups that would follow. In 1961, the Shirelles recorded Baby It's You by Burt Bacharach, Luther Dixon, their producer, and lyricist Mac David. That single peaked at 3 on the R&B chart, 8 on the Billboard Hot 100, being a crossover hit for them. That song was soon covered by the Beatles as well on their debut album and remains well known because of it. But the Shirelles also recorded a Bacharach and Hal David song called It's Love That Really Counts, that to this listener, Ancat Dub, not me because I haven't heard it yet, was more musically significant. This song has what is commonly known as class, and the combination of Bacharach's sophisticated, even elegant composition effects with Hal David's adult-themed love balladry created something distinctly different from the competing adolescent-oriented doo-wop and rock hits of the early 1960s. Up to that point, Bacharach had been writing in various styles what were mostly catchy novelty tracks, always hoping for a radio hit. It's Love That Really Counts would not be that hit. Sorry to disappoint, but it does feature a few of the style elements that become Bacharach trademarks. Some of those signature techniques are: 1. The use of an all-female harmony group to both sing the song and hum or vocalize the melody lines. Bacharach would use these female harmony groups on his own record albums countless times while using his voice sparingly. 2. Dramatically slow tempos. This song is a 4/4 time, but it certainly isn't very danceable. There's a prominent steady pulse, but that's all that might make this an R&B or rock song. He often seems to be daring his audience to care about what's something more in the music than just a fast rhythm groove. The rock world would, of course, be very dismissive of anything played quietly at a really slow tempo. 3. The use of dramatic pauses, tempo, and mood shifts that break up the expected flow of the composition. Bacharach was a master of the change-up. He seemed to take delight in subverting the listener's expectations about how a tune would develop or flow. Number 4, the use of sparse but well-crafted arrangements and the attention to small details, such as the particular sounds and specific instruments being used in each section of the tune. Unlike the Phil Spector wall of sound approach in which the musicians play all at once and on top of each other, Bacharach had an excellent sense for space and simplicity. He did employ strings in his 1960s arrangements, but they tend to be small ensembles used sparingly, emphasizing only particular parts of a song. And number 5, finally, this song and so many others feature riffs, vamps, and or melodic hooks used for various purposes, sometimes punctuating an emotional passage in the song, other times playing off against one another in a kind of call and response. If you're the kind of person who gets bored easily hearing the same guitar riff played over and over again for 6 minutes, then you probably appreciate Bacharach's need to create variations and then change up the song structure with instrumental breaks or bridges and intros and outros that may have a completely different tempo and or mood from the main verse and chorus. Also, nothing is left to chance here. Bacharach rarely used much improvisation on any recordings he was involved with. It was a classical musician's approach, and I realize that's not going to be for everyone. All right, I'm going to have the lyrics up as always. Thanks again, Ancat Dub. Okay, definitely different than what you would expect when I say Shirelles and of this time period, right? You definitely do feel everything that Ancat Dub broke down so eloquently and excellently, with the pauses, with the music, with being more dialed back and more particular, right? More not bleeding over into each other. Yeah, everything is very intentional. So super enjoyed that. That was really good, and it is definitely really different. And I could see how, people who want kind of the more, I don't know how to put it nicely. I don't mean this bad. I love the kind of music, kind of more mindless, just kind of straight by the numbers music of this period where you're just kind of rocking out and you can kind of just zone out to the lyrics. You don't really need to worry about those. It's more about the beat and the feeling of it. But this, I think also by doing that, you do put more emphasis on the lyrics. That puts more pressure on the lyricist. Whereas the music that's more, quote, catchy and totally beat driven, you don't have to worry about it as much. All right, next up, we got the great Dionne Warwick, Walk On By from 1964. Dionne Warwick is often referred to as Bacharach and David's muse, and they arranged to have her record most of their material as it appeared throughout the 60s and early 70s. She had the right mix of R&B and pop sensibilities for Bacharach's sound and David's lyrical themes. Walk On By was composed by Burt Bacharach in 1963 with lyrics by his favorite partner, Hal David. Dionne recorded as a single in 1964, went to 6 on the Hot 100 Billboard chart, 1 on the Cash Box R&B chart. The song was later nominated for a Grammy in 1965 for Best Rhythm and Blues Recording of 1964. But for better or worse, lost out to Nancy Wilson, someone who I've featured recently on this channel. Her recording of How Glad I Am Baby Love by the Supremes, and Good Times by maybe the greatest male vocalist of all time, Sam Cooke, were among the other nominees. I added in one of the maybe the greatest male vocalists of all time. So that was not on ANCAT dubs. I don't want to put words in ANCAT's mouth, but that was mine. To give you an idea of the competition that year. In 1998, the 1964 recording by Dion was inducted in the Grammy Hall of Fame. There have been various covers of this song over the years by artists such as Isaac Hayes, Gloria Gaynor, the Average White Band, Melissa Manchester, Seal, Cyndi Lauper, and the Stranglers. Definitely a varied group. Walk On By tends to make everyone's top 10 or top 5 list for Bacharach tunes. It's a signature Bacharach R&B number. Excellent vocals by Dion. Piano work was fantastic. You really do notice the difference when you listen to these songs with the mindset that ANCAT Dub told us what to look for, and that helps. But definitely sounds different. Great song, great songwriting. You know, it's not it's still, it is a higher level of songwriting than a lot of times you got at this time period, and that's not any shade at anybody, man. But you know, she's broke up with the guy, but she has to see him all the time, which is nothing worse than that when you have an ended relationship, but you have to see that person all the time. It's pretty hard to heal, and so she breaks down every time, but she doesn't want him to come over and say anything to her, just leave me alone and I'll get through it. So very, very good choice. Now, I had not heard the first track. I'm pretty sure I've heard the track by Dion, maybe not her version, but it seemed familiar. I know this song. I don't know if I know this version, but What the World Needs Now, Jackie DeShannon, released in 1965. Like Warwick's recording of Walk On By, Jackie DeShannon's recording of What the World Needs Now Is Love is often ranked as one of the top 5 Bacharach songs. The track was recorded as a single in 1965, with Burt actually producing, arranging, and conducting the recording session. Peaked at 7 in the U.S. Canada, went to number 1. Wikipedia states that the song was originally offered to Dion, who turned it down at the time, saying she felt it was, quote, too country for her taste and too preachy. Fortunately, Bacharach knew of another singer who was both country and gospel in her vocal styling, Jackie DeShannon. The song and a cameo from Burt himself also appears in the 1997 movie Austin Powers, International Man of Mystery, starring Mike Myers and Elizabeth Hurley. In 2005, the 1965 recording by DeShannon, this one was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame like the previous song. DeShannon's version of the song was also selected by the U.S. Library of Congress for preservation in the National Recording Registry in 2023. Much like Walk On By, the song features a slow, measured tempo and basically simple arrangement, but with a truly iconic melodic hook played on the tuba. Definitely an unusual choice of instruments for a pop recording, but everyone who hears it remembers that sad melodic riff the rest of their life. Another Wikipedia quote, co-writer Burt Bacharach revealed in his 2014 autobiography that this song had among the most difficult lyrics Hal David ever wrote, despite being deceptively simple as a pop hit. He explained that they had the main melody and chorus written back in 1962, centering on a waltz tempo, but it took another 2 years for David to finally come up with the lyric, Lord, we don't need another mountain. Once David worked out the verses, Bacharach said the song essentially, quote, wrote itself, and they finished it in a day or two. The song's success caught the two songwriters completely by surprise, since they were very aware of the controversy and disagreements among Americans about the Vietnam War, which was the subtext for David's lyrics. Bacharach continuously used this song as the intro and finale for most of his live concert appearances well into the 2000s. So that tells you what Burt thought of it. All right, the classic What the World Needs Now Is Love. I've never heard this version, so I've never heard the version with the tuba. It is an incredibly interesting choice. I mean, it stands out. It comes in right away. The female backing in here to pop it up a little bit, which was on the Dion song as well, you know, and Cat Dub had talked about that, using those vocals. It really stands out here. And the strings, as it was on a previous song that we listened to, very understated, very well done. But the lyrics of this song are absolutely fantastic and so relevant now in 2025 when I'm recording this. It's the exact same thing, but this is a really, really like classic, iconic, timeless song. Next up, we're going to go to another Dionne Warwick song released in 1965, Are You There with Another Girl? Dionne released this as a single in December of 1965, reached 39 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart, but things were different by December of 1965. A lot of stuff was going on in those charts. It also appeared as a 10th track on her 1965 album, Here I Am. This track is a personal favorite of mine, ANCAT Dub says. I love the well-crafted arrangement that slowly builds in intensity, eventually soaring in the instrumental break before returning the more pensive and fretful verse. There's some fascinating climbing and descending patterns to the melody line that no one in pop music but Bacharach seems to employ, and Hal David's lyrics are among his most vivid. Note that the song's theme is very reminiscent of Silhouettes, a song made famous by the doo-wop group The Rays in 1957, later becoming a hit single in 1965 by Herman's Hermits. Wikipedia says author Serene Dominic praised the song in the book Burt Bacharach, song by song, writing of its droning strings, strange fret-sliding guitar, and orchestral crescendos, which precede the Beatles' A Day in the Life, in my opinion, their best song from 1967. He also speculates that the song influenced Beach Boys composer Brian Wilson, who has recently passed, for the Pet Sounds album track Let's Go Away for a While. That's quite the influence. All right, what a song. And we got to hear that pausing that ANCAT Dub started or pointed out at the beginning, right? We heard it as, every time you're there with another girl, and then she'd pause. So to draw you in, the music would kind of stop. It does soar in the instrumental. We talked about the different kind of climbing in the melodic parts. So yeah, I thought that was really well done. I could see why they used Deanne. Like, it seems like she understands exactly how to deliver these songs, because there are little nuances in there that, he has to tell her. Like, here's where I want you to do this and that. Because if you're just singing this straight up looking at it, you're just going to sing that straight. But part of the beauty of it, where the arrangement comes in so well and the way the music is written, is that she's got to know where to add those nuances. So, and you got to have somebody who's willing to do that and capable of doing that. It's a really good song. All right, next up, a guy that I know who he is, but I don't really know anything about him. We got Herb Alpert. This song was released in 1968. We got This Guy's in Love with You. Herb Alpert was hugely successful as a trumpeter and frontman of the Tijuana Brass instrumental group during the 1960s and 1970s. What many people do not know is that he actually tried his hand at writing songs initially. Probably the only one of those songs with lasting importance was Sam Cooke's recording of What a Wonderful World by Sam Cooke, Lou Adler, and Herb Alpert. Both Lou Adler and Alpert would use whatever earnings they acquired through songwriting to get into the production and business side of the music business. Alpert, partnering with promoter Jerry Moss, would found A&M Records. I did not know that was Herb Alpert. In Los Angeles in 1962. It would become America's largest independent record company, as one of the few to be actually appreciated by the artist due to Alpert's genuine interest in the careers of his fellow musicians. Throughout the 1960s, Alpert put just as much time into promoting his own career as a performer as he did in running A&M Records. But despite their many Billboard chart successes, Alpert and the Tijuana Brass had never achieved a number one hit until he chose to record a vocal track. Bacharach and David's This Guy's in Love with You released as a single in 1968. Alpert wasn't a trained singer and didn't possess much of a range, but his vocal delivery on the song was so on the mark that it remains an iconic 1960s recording, and many people wanted to believe that Alpert had written the song himself, given the degree to which he made this track his own. When hearing a song that they really like, many people ask, are there other songs like this one? Well, in this case, there is such a song. I recommend listening to The Balance of Nature, written by Bacharach and David and sung by Burt Bacharach himself. Neither Alpert nor Bacharach could claim to have great singing voices, but they managed to use their limited singing skills very effectively on these tracks, and both songs are guaranteed to leave you with a lump in your throat. What a write-up. All right, that song actually spent 4 weeks at number one in 1968. I never heard this song. I haven't heard most of these songs, but it came about. I was reading where Herb actually asked Burt, do you have any unrecorded songs that I could do? He gave him this one, but it really does, like, you are safe in the hands of Burt Bacharach and his songs if you're not a great singer, because the instrumentation and the use of melody and instrumentation fading in and out is going to protect you. Like, Herb's totally protected here. Song's really good, really well done. Get even a little bit of those female backings coming in there. And it was perfectly built for somebody like Herb, because in the bridge and the fade out, they had those great instrumental solos built into the song. So perfect choice. All right, so remember, this isn't really a traditional top 10. They're not ranked. They're ordered according to release, but we're halfway through the list, so we're to the halfway mark. Another Dion song released in 1968, Promises, Promises. It peaked at 19 in 1968 on the Billboard Hot 100, actually taken from the Broadway hit musical of the same name, with music by Bacharach and David, and the script, or book, as they call it in the Broadway stage world, by playwright, of course, the famous Neil Simon. While many Bacharach and David songs are very slow in tempo, especially in comparison to the average rock song, this one's up-tempo, very energetic, has fascinating climbing and falling melody lines. It's not an easy tune to sing by any means, and it features one of the truly great horn arrangements of the 1960s. If you like Promises, Promises, I also recommend listening to the Bacharach and David song, Reflections, which has similar energy and horns too. So I got to take this moment to tell you, and I'll remind you again at the end, but linked below is a Burt Bacharach artist spotlight that ANCAT Dub, the patron that brought this, that's writing all this, that did all this research, put up. So I'm linking it down below. So you just go in there and it's already been curated with great tunes. All right, let's go. What a song, man. What a build. Like, it's just incredibly well constructed, as they've all been. I don't want to sound redundant, but it has to be said for every song. Super enjoyed that one. Everyone is just so well done, so well thought out. You can tell, as ANCAT Dub mentioned, Starlight, these are not just thrown together. These are not just improvised, man. You don't get this level of technical superiority by just winging it or going, in the studio, I think I'm going to do this. Like, I super respect that. We got 4 songs left. We got The Look of Love by Sergio Mendes and Brazil 66, released in 1968. It was specifically written for the 1967 James Bond spoof Casino Royale, starring David Niven and Peter Sellers, and a huge supporting cast that included the young Woody Allen and even Orson Welles. I adored this film as a kid. It epitomized for me swinging London and the mod fashion scene of the time. And the fact that the movie featured a Burt Bacharach soundtrack probably didn't hurt. The title instrumental track happened to be performed by Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass, whereas the song The Look of Love was performed by British soul diva Dusty Springfield, who's fantastic. Her version's quite slow and languid, which I assume was intended to make it sexier, but I always got sleepy instead. My preference is this version. Now, Sergio Mendes was a supposed discovery of Herb Alpert, although I would argue that the group was destined for pop stardom and Alpert was simply smart enough to get them under his contract to his A&M Records label before someone else got the same idea. The first album would in fact be titled Herb Alpert Presents Sergio Mendes and the Brazil 66, which will give you an idea of the weight Alpert's name carried in those days. I was just thinking the same thing. Now, the lead singer of Brazil 66 was an American, Lanny Hall, who sang many of their tunes in Portuguese, Sergio Mendes being a native of Brazil, but she sang the songs phonetically and didn't really know the language. That's pretty freaking amazing, which is just an interesting fact since no one was really the wiser. And she was so successful at mimicking both the Portuguese and Spanish languages in song that she continued to record hits in those languages throughout her solo singing career. That's a crazy story, man. Our friend Herb Alpert would eventually fall madly in love with Lanny Hill, and they would be married in the 1970s. They recently celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary, which is a rather remarkable accomplishment for an entertainment business couple. I mean, that's a fantastic story. Here's the rub. The Look of Love was actually one of the few songs that Lanny Hall didn't take the lead on. Rather, it was secondary vocalist Janice Hansen who got to take a star turn here. And a further twist in the story, it was Sergio Mendes and Brazil 66 who actually performed the song on an Academy Awards broadcast, the film version sung by Dusty Springfield having been nominated for the Best Original Song Oscar, but Springfield wasn't available to perform. And so this TV performance of the Brazil 66 version, arranged by Sergio Mendes, who was no slouch himself as an arranger, sent their single of The Look of Love to the number 4 position on the Billboard Hot 100 chart in, I know you're paying attention, 1968. All right, another excellent song. Obviously the brass and stuff on here are fantastic. The song has really reminded me of another song, but I could not pin it down. And don't you hate that, guys, when that happens? I could not get it in my head. It was right there, but really good choice. Now we're going to get to a song I do know, Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head, from B.J. Thomas, released in 1969. Specifically written by Bacharach and David to be a featured song for the 1969 film Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, starring Paul Newman and Robert Redford, of course, which Bacharach had been commissioned to compose the soundtrack for. It was somewhat unusual at the time to use contemporary music styles for an obviously period film. Some of the other music fits the movie's Western theme better, but the intentionally odd juxtaposition of modern music with the late 1800 storyline ended up being influential in Hollywood. The film was a huge hit with the audience, and so was this song. Released as a single in January of 1970, went all the way to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart in the U.S., Canada and Norway number 1 on the Adult Contemporary chart in the U.S. Bacharach was the arranger for the album and single recordings. It also won Oscar for Best Original Song, and Bacharach also won Best Original Score for Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. The song was recorded by American singer B.J. Thomas, who happened to be sick with the flu and laryngitis at the time of this recording session. It is debated whether his illness actually helped him to get the right sound and feel for this particular song. The vocal track was actually re-recorded by Thomas for the later single version. The trumpet outro on the track is signature Bacharach. 2014, it was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame. Okay, I knew that song, but I don't know if I've ever heard the whole song. I just knew the hook of the song, right? So really well done. It was originally offered to Ray Stevens and then to Bob Dylan. But that was kind of crazy. And in 2004, it was number 23 on the top 100, AFI's top 100 songs of cinema for their first 100 years. So High praise. You can see why. Also, technically, it seems like a simple song, but it's not when you're listening for all the things that I'm listening for in every song that ANCAT Dub pointed out. So really well done. The B.J. Thomas one where he has laryngitis is included on the soundtrack of this album under a different name, just FYI. I got 2 songs left. Another song I definitely know. In parentheses, They Long to Be Close to You by the Carpenters, released in 1970. As I mentioned previously, ANCAT Dub said this was actually written years before it became a hit. Bacharach and David wrote the song in 1963, the year it was recorded by Richard Chamberlain, but didn't gain any traction on the charts. Instead, it was a singles B-side, the Bacharach and David penned Blue Guitar, that became a minor hit. Both Dionne Warwick and Dusty Springfield recorded versions of the song in the mid-'60s, but their efforts gained no real notice. Then in 1970, the Carpenters were essentially coerced into reviving the song as the title song of their latest album and released as a single in May of 1970. This recording would be a massive breakout hit for the Carpenters. It's worth mentioning that the Carpenters were essentially discovered by legendary Wrecking Crew bassist Joe Osborne, who some will remember as the recording bassist for the Fifth Dimension, the Mamas and the Papas, the Association, the Grassroots, and many other acts of the period. Osborne played a crucial role in bringing the Teenage Carpenters to the attention of none other than, the man, Herb Alpert and A&M Records. As a respected West Coast studio bassist who had worked with Alpert in the past, Osborne believed in the Carpenters' talent and allowed them to record a demo in his garage studio, even playing bass on several tracks. A copy of this demo reel was then sent to Herb Alpert, who subsequently signed the Carpenters. It's a small world, at least in the music business, and it definitely is. Wikipedia, released on May 14, 1970, topped both the U.S. Billboard Hot 100 and Adult Contemporary charts, reached the top of the Canadian and Australian charts, peaked at 6 on the charts of both the UK and Ireland. In 2018, Billboard ranked it the top single of the summer of 1970. Bacharach and David gave Herb Alpert the song after he scored a number 1 hit in 1968 with This Guy's in Love with You, which the duo had also written. Alpert recorded the song, but he was displeased with the recording and did not release it. After the Carpenters achieved their first entry on the Billboard Hot 100 chart with Ticket to Ride in 1969, Alpert approached him to record their version of the song, believing it was well suited for them. With some reluctance, Richard Carpenter worked up an arrangement, but wasn't keen on it. He expected the matter to pass without further word. Short time later, word circulated back to Richard and Karen that Herb really wanted them to record the song. Knowing he and Karen were in a vulnerable position with the label after the lackluster performance of Ticket to Ride, peaked at 54, Richard went back to work. He's trying to maintain that recording contract. Carpenter and Alpert collaborated on the song, and the finished product for the album was 4 minutes and 36 seconds. When A&M Records decided to remove the extended coda, released as a 3-minute, 40-second single in May 1970, it became their biggest hit since This Guy's in Love with You in 1968. Billboard ranked it as the number 2 song for 1970. End of Wikipedia. Back to ANCAT Dub. Note that the brief horn solo, which sounds to me like a musical wink or nod to the tune's composer, who so often used horns in his arrangement, was intended to be played by Herb Alpert, but Alpert wasn't available for the recording date. So Wrecking Crew session musician Chuck Finley played what was actually a flugelhorn and not a trumpet. Joe Osborne plays the bass, and his friend Hal Blaine played the drums on this recording. Just legendary names, guys. What I find fascinating about the Carpenter and Alpert arrangement is that it manages to be more Bacharachish than even Burt Bacharach's own original version for Richard Chamberlain. And Bacharach later admitted that he completely missed the boat with his own arrangements of the song. Sometimes you just don't know what you have. You got to have another set of eyes, right? You're too close to it. All right, I knew this song. I mean, it's still before my time. I was born in 1971, but I've heard this song, but never paid a ton of attention to it. Karen's voice is so iconic, and this is the song that absolutely put them on the map worldwide. But I listened to it in headphones and with this kind of, critical ear, so to speak. Just the arrangement of it, the backing vocalist, never realized all that stuff, the crispness of it, just when the piano comes, like all of it. It's definitely a Bacharach sounding tune. There's zero doubt about that in the production. But yeah, I mean, iconic, and obviously Karen, just one of the many tragedies in the history of music, but she was just fantastic. Now to our last track. Remember, it's not number 1, it's just the last one released in 1971, as I just mentioned, the year of my birth. Something Big by Mark Lindsay. It was the title song for yet another film soundtrack, and Hal David was the lyricist here. It was recorded for the film by singer Mark Lindsay, best known as the lead singer, for the classic rock band Paul Revere and the Raiders. This recording always impressed me with its light, breezy rhythm. It flows along really nicely, although Lindsay's recorded version was not actually arranged by Bacharach. It keeps to the feel and spirit of Bacharach's own recorded version of the song, closely enough that I feel okay presenting this cover. And it was the one that debuted the song in the movie. Somehow this track was a quintessentially 1970s vibe to me. The arrangement's no longer as intricately structured around the vamps and riffs employed in so many earlier Bacharach tunes of the 1950s and 60s. It floats and soars into my ears. Many of Bacharach's later compositions have this lighter, jazzier sensibility, but that ironically may have contributed to Bacharach being associated with easy listening and elevator music by later generations. All right, let's finish this list off. That was a quick one. I definitely found it lighter, as ANCAT Dub put. More piano, just kind of a flowing piano, definitely a lighter sound to it, but it works, and it does seem like when I think of the 70s, what it should flow into in the 70s, especially during this time period. So, and I definitely don't think that song was elevator music, but I know what ANCAT Dub's saying, and I know what gets called that nowadays, but a good way to finish this list off. Now I'll go to my favorite tracks. I don't know, man. You know, put a list like this together. I mean, they're all really great tracks. It's almost disrespectful to pick favorites, but I do pick favorites. So I'm going to go with that first song we heard. It's Love That Really Counts by the Shirelles. I just liked the way it was so much different than what I expected. What the World Needs Now is Love by Jackie DeShannon, just because the lyrics are fantastic. I know that's not what Burt's doing here, but man, golly, I just don't know. I mean, Promises, Promises, maybe by Dion for the different kind of arrangement. And I mean, I hate to pick the two that I already knew because it's kind of familiarity bias, but I'll do it anyway. Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head by BJ Thomas and Close to You by the Carpenters. Fantastic stuff. Thank you to ANCAT Dub for bringing this. Don't forget to check out the Spotify link below that has a bunch of Bacharach songs, and they're curated by ANCAT Dub, who I don't want to put words in his mouth, but an expert on this stuff. Great write-up, great job. And now I know a lot more about Burt Bacharach. And when you listen to these songs in this environment like this focused, you really do hear the difference in his arrangement and others of the time. It's fantastic. I learned a lot on this one, as I always do from ANCAT Dub. Let me know your favorites down below, other Bacharach songs that you love. And until next time, guys, I will see you.